welcome to the fourth episode of the 2026 Ask an Expert series. And this session is on the topic of smart factory for the metals industry. Before getting started, some housekeeping items. If you have any questions for our speaker, please enter them using the question button and we'll answer them in the end. You also have a way to contact our team for any additional guidance or assistance. You can access any additional resources that's relevant to the webinar today. You can also connect with our speaker today using the contact symbol to connect with the product manager. Then if you need any technical assistance, you can do that as well using the question button on your webinar tool. And then finally, we will have a quick survey in the end. This survey really helps us improve our future sessions. So with that, I wanted to go over all of the upcoming episodes that are coming up on this series. So far, we have had 3 episodes, and we have many more coming up for the rest of the year. So if you haven't already, you can scan this QR code and assign yourself to attend any of these upcoming webinars. In addition to that, you can also watch our past webinars in the on-demand recording. And with that, I'm going to pass it to our speaker today, Will Doherty, who is the Global Business Consultant Leader at Velotic. So, Will, I'll pass it to you. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Arnie. Hello, everyone. Nice to be here with you today. Today, we're going to be talking a little bit about how our Velotic software helps metals manufacturers. Steel will be specific today, but it can be brass or aluminum or anything else, or any specialty metals, and really kind of showing about some of the value and the outcomes and what our solution looks like. So this is going to be the agenda for today. We're going to start out basically doing a little bit of an introduction to Velotic, which is our company. And then I'm going to be talking a little bit about how we apply our solutions to help with operations in the metals industry. I'm going to go over some use cases and showing you some software, then actually go to like a customer success story so you can actually see, you know, what a project looked like from start to finish. And then at the end, we'll do some Q&A. And certainly, if there are any questions there is a Q&A panel here in the presentation. So if you do have questions along the time, go ahead and type those in, and Arnie will actually go ahead and bring those up, and we can answer those during the presentation. All right. So the first thing I'd like to do is go over what is Velotic. So if you know, we've been GE for a long time, and we have smart factory MES solutions. We also have HMI SCADA solutions. We have a process historian for storing all of the data coming off of your machines and equipment. We have our MES suite, which helps you plan your orders and actually execute on your orders and make sure that you're making the right product at the right time, you're utilizing all your assets. And we also have scheduling software that's in there. So really focused on connecting, from what orders I need to make, connecting to your machines and connecting with your employees to actually help produce and get your deliveries out with high quality and on time and get your yields up. That's kind of really the focus of our suite. And then what we've actually done is we actually became a company called Velotic, where we have that prophecy suite I just mentioned. And then we're actually merging in with Kepware, which has been, if you don't know about it, it is the world leading connectivity software. So basically, no matter what your PLCs are, or no matter what your DCS system is, or no matter what your IoT sensor strategy is, Kepware has the ability to connect up to any of your machines. And then we also have ThingWorx, which is a software package that was added, which is, again, a tool that allows you to visualize what's happening in your manufacturing operations and basically go through and has some dashboarding capabilities and some AI capabilities, things like that. So basically putting all of this together, we're really now a software company that's very focused on improving operations for manufacturers. Just to kind of give you a heads up, we are a global company. A lot of our software has been around for 30 years. We've been helping customers for 30 years. improve operations. And now we're just doing it with more focus and more speed. As you can tell with AI and the investment cycles, just what's happening in the software space is super exciting. And the advancements that people are finding that software can deliver versus big capital projects, just the bang for your buck and the speed at which you can deliver ROI versus doing big capital projects is just very compelling to a lot of our customers. And really, these are kind of the challenges that we're focused on here. So asset utilization, how can I make sure that the assets I have are running and running all the time? And we're actually scheduled to run and that they're making good product quality and we're avoiding any catastrophic failures. The next thing is the middle here. We have the production data. How can I eliminate paper? How can I get all of the information coming from the machines and turn that into useful information? How can I have tracking what the operators are actually doing so I don't have to use paper travelers all over the place? So how can I kind of digitize all of that? And then also, how can I go through here and get all of my production tasks and digitize them, but also go into quality activities. And if people are doing line side checks, if I'm getting stuff off my machine around the thickness of my, if I'm in a rolling mill and I want to look at the thickness of my coil, how do I look at that? How do I take tests of the actual material? How do I track the genealogy through my process to make sure that, the ingredients I have are actually making the right spec of steel and the steel has the right hardness and things like that. So all of that is really what we're focused on. And what we're going to do today is really talk about how our suite is really designed to help people who are in the metals industry. And this can be in people who are, going from raw iron ore into, maybe it's rebar, maybe it's coils, or maybe it's slabs, whatever they're making, or if someone's in the aluminum, right? How are they actually refining that? Maybe they're extruding it. How do they go through that? Or even if people are machining metal, how can we go ahead and help people who are actually doing processing of metal and tracking their yields and machine utilization? Let me see. Aroni, have there been any questions yet? Just let me know. Let me know if any questions do come through. All right. So to give some background here, we've been making software for 35 years, focused on manufacturing. The place that we are really good is connecting up to machines. The amount of PLCs and instrumentation on the shop floor every year grows. And, with the price of sensors and battery sensors and wireless sensors and closed loop control, that's just continuing. The machines are becoming more and more incredible. We're able to run faster, quicker, safer with all these machines. But now what we need to do is we need to be able to get the data off of those machines to figure out what's happening and also get signals from those machines that might help us change things like our set points or things like that to improve the outcomes that we're having. So we have 1,200 global metals, minerals, and mining customers. We do a lot in mining also. 500,000 installations using our software, plants over 90 countries. And what we've also got here, another thing that we've talked about is with software and delivering ROI, people are really interested in speed. And sometimes they say, we don't have the resources, or it's so hard to get computers nowadays. We don't have the ability to stand up one of these systems. Can you actually host this software for us? And that will allow us to get, the value and get up and running a lot quicker. So we do have SaaS, which means software as a service, but that basically means kind of like Gmail. Instead of you having to have your own email server, you can basically log in and you can actually use our software. Incredibly high uptime, so you don't have to worry about that latency or downtime when your plant's running. And then the other side of it is we also have scheduling software, which really helps you set up, this is the production I want to develop this week or in the next 2 weeks in order to get my on-time deliveries out and get my orders completed. So this helps you actually do detailed scheduling across all of your assets. So if you say, I have 4 furnaces, basically you get to pick which furnaces am I going to run, which lots am I going to have in each of those furnaces, right? And then, if it does take time to warm up or you have to, how long does it take to heat, all of that stuff, you can actually go out to, your furnaces, you can actually go out to your rolling mills and schedule what production is going to be there and how long it's going to take. And this allows you to optimize that production schedule to get your delivery dates hit and also to get your utilization up. Here are some of the outcomes and the challenges that we've really seen in the metals industry. Obviously very capital intensive industry, a lot of electricity use, a lot of big equipment, things like that. Really, some of the things is how do we actually go out and get our certificates of analysis out there for all of our products, market volatility and supply chain disruptions. If I do have some supply chain disruptions, how can I do substitution materials or use more scrap and still get my product out? Talent and labor shortages. How can I go and get best practices? How can I onboard employees quicker? How can I get the software to basically help employees know what to do? Can it give recommendations on set points? Can it look at the previous run of that product and give insights into what you need to change? Maybe if it's very hot ambient temperature versus cold ambient temperature, maybe you have a different mix of material. Maybe you run your process slightly different. Production agility and manufacturing throughput. If something happens, let's say I lose a ladle, can I quickly change my production schedule to make the best of the assets I have available? So how can I quickly change my production schedule based on some other factors that are affecting my schedule? Also, inventory management. Obviously, in the metals industry, how can I know what's in inventory? How can I make sure that I'm ordering the right raw materials? How can I know what finished goods I have in the warehouse? How can I look at my schedule and figure out what finished goods will be in there on Friday? How can I find out where it is in my warehouse? If I have to stage some of this stuff to go into a furnace, how can I help, the warehouse team actually stage it? So a lot of that stuff, management of assets, looking at maintenance schedules, looking at how I look at the usage of my electrodes and my furnaces. Another big problem people have is they have 5 or 6 different software solutions, and they also have a lot of paper solutions. How can I go to having just one solution that kind of is my production single source of truth? The other really important part about that is if I do have one data set for this is what I scheduled, this is actually what I did, and here's the quality, and here's the genealogy, and here's all of the information about that production run. If you have all of that in context, that's a beautiful data set to be able to put AI on to actually say, let me try and figure out, what we can do differently given that data set in order to improve operations going forward. So just having that one data set, that clean data set, really does help future-proofing your operations, because as AI becomes more and more powerful, having a data set for it to go off of is really important. So if you can go off of your ERP data set, your maintenance data set, and this production MES data set, putting all of those together is a really powerful, data lake for the ERP or for the AI to go after. Another thing we see a lot is energy consumption, whether it's natural gas or electricity. Just being able to, look at what is my, electric consumption or my energy consumption per ton, looking at it by lots. How can I optimize that? If I do have, different rates at different times of day, how can I schedule my production in order to not hit those peaks? And then obviously, how can I drop my, price per ton on my stuff by being more optimized? So those are all kind of the things that we're trying to focus on here with our software. And then obviously these slides will be available afterwards, but obviously this is what we do. So, we have scheduling and, software that goes in here, full digital fingerprint of your manufacturing. So basically we actually solve all of these with our software. And then what we actually do is we actually have use cases. So how do we go and optimize production? How do we decrease costs? If you look at this, reduce process variation by 40%. So really going through and making sure that, maybe if the spec is, 14 gauge, how do I get that really tight process variation so I'm always delivering right at the spec for 14 gauge and very consistent product? So some of those things are things that we're focused on delivering. If you do look here at the value of having a digital MES that's really focused on optimizing production and helping you schedule in an optimal way and then actually executing against that schedule, right? So we call it schedule adherence, right? Do I have 95%? So if I thought this is what was going to happen this week, Is that actually what happened, or did I have a whole bunch of variations? So I thought I was going to get out, a certain tonnage, and I ended up only getting 80% of that tonnage out. What happened? Like, why did my ideal schedule not work? And some of those things here around, increasing your growth, reducing costs, improving efficiency, or building your company's strength of your reputation, all of that happens. Now, all of these highlighted boxes are things that we do affect. Things around new product innovation, we don't really help with that too much. The pricing of your finished goods, we don't help with that. We would help you have a really good handle on your cost structure, but how you price it into the market, given them, the market dynamics, that might be another software package. But really focusing on, quality, manufacturing throughput, yield is important, energy costs, right? So these are all kind of the outcomes that we can help. And if you can, always produce high quality, you can always hit your delivery dates, right? You can always be competitively priced. You're going to become the number one supplier for your customer base and be able to charge a premium for that. And then once we look at those value outcomes, the next thing we end up doing is kind of saying, you know what, if you were to implement our software, right, this is what we would actually see as the outcomes that you would be able to realize, the financial outcomes, right? And we can get into this if you do engage with us, right? We can go through and do this kind of study based on what you're producing and how we would be able to improve certain things, right? So if you had increased availability, if you had increased throughput, right? If you actually had, direct labor savings, maybe there's less overtime, or you can run your machines different ways. So different, there's different levers that have different outcomes, but basically looking at some of these to kind of give you, here's kind of the ROI we would expect on this project. And as I said, software is so compelling right now for how quickly you can deploy it and how powerful it is to really help, right, get that 3% year over year improvement every year going forward. Really hits that bottom line, right? The good thing is it hits top line. You actually ship more with the same assets, and hits bottom line because you're more efficient to actually produce those goods. All right, now I actually want to show you some of this software and what it actually looks like. So in this case, I'm going to go through, I'm going to go through a use case here where someone was actually making rebar, and they were actually getting in raw iron ore. They were actually having the process to go to direct reduced iron. They were actually putting it into an arc furnace, electric arc furnace, and it was actually mixed with scrap plus DRI together. And then they were using that melt, putting into a ladle. They were doing continuous casting, putting it into a rolling mill, and then going out to the stockyard. So really what they were wanting to do is all of these things on the side here. So they wanted to do stockyard management. Because this was completely vertically integrated, when it went all from raw iron ore all the way to the stockyard, they basically had that whole process dialed in. A lot of people we know don't do the whole process end to end, but these basically did go all the way through. And then instead of going by rail or by truck, they actually shipped back out, via the ships. So really production planning, quality, and sustainability were really the big levers they wanted to focus on. And I'll kind of show you here some of the things. So this is kind of what would be an operation screen that would be down on the shop floor. So this is where we're actually looking at the electric arc furnace. And you can actually see here, they're actually charging. So here's all the steps in a production run. So here's the shift, here's the crew, right? And here's all steps. So right now we're actually filling up the furnace with a mix of scrap and DRI. And you basically can go here and people can set up, what are the actual electrodes that are there? Here's the ladle feeding information. You can actually see estimated start time and end time. You can actually change these times that are here, which will actually help adjust the schedule. So this is a screen that someone would end up, using. Some cool features in here, you were actually able to look at your electrode health. And then if you had new electrodes that were ready, you could actually use this screen to actually swap out and say, okay, this electrode's been consumed. I actually am now going to go ahead and swap it out. So again, a very active operator-centric screen around how do I actually keep track of my production run, and how do I actually run it, and then how do I even keep track of my assets like my electrodes and make sure that I'm seeing that the electrode health is there. So Another thing here is once you're actually now at the casting phase, you're actually looking at your ladle here and you're actually looking at your casting. But again, this is showing you exactly what your quality is. It's showing you what your production is. This is actually the temperatures inside the ladle at all of these points. So we actually have the ability to track that. And if a temperature goes above a limit alarm, right, for that product, it will actually flag here in red, and maybe you'll know that you have to get that refractory fixed, things like that. So basically, this is actually letting you also see exactly data as we talked about, right? All that production data is streaming off your machines, being able to see all of that, and then actually go through and making sure that my ladle's working well, and then also keeping track of, you know, all of the lots from this arc furnace went into this ladle. They then went into this casting, and then that went into our rolling mill, and then that ended up in these lots of rebar that were this certification, and tracking that all the way through, and they eventually were shipped to this building site, right? But having that genealogy all the way through about what machines and what assets and what time and what quality were you measuring for your production all the way through. So again, this is kind of just showing we're now at the casting phase, and at the end we'll be finished. So our solution has all of this ability to go through and keep track of everything here. The next thing is kind of our inventory. So this is if you have a yard or a warehouse, how can I actually click on an inventory area and see all of the lots that are there? So you'll actually be able to see, what are the lots, what are the quality of lots, when were they made? So you can actually do searches in here by, you can actually look at, a run or a heat, right? You can actually look at a quality. You can actually look at a different yards. You can say, hey, show me all of this product that's ready to ship, right? Or I want to see all of the inventory that's left that was actually run during this production run. So all of that you can actually see here. So anywhere you click, you can actually set this up. The screen before, you could actually say, I want to send this rebar to this location, and it would actually put an order in and then track it there. So again, inventory visibility and actually inventory movement is all part of our solution. And then just kind of some of the ideas here is they also wanted some executive stuff just to show what is my production, what's my product mix, and what is my performance like. So they actually did this by their different areas. So the direct reduction areas of the plant, which we're turning the iron ore into the DRI, what am I actually consuming and producing here, right, by ton and by percentage, right? And then what's in the yard and the allocation. So what grades are there in allocation. So this is kind of showing you an executive dashboard, showing you for your, DRI, for your electric furnaces. Again, I want to look at a high level 24-hour and 7-day mix, but really these are some of the KPIs that I want. So how can I actually see, what is my tap to tap time, how much electricity consumption, so again, natural gas consumption, right? So again, here, just looking at high level metrics, in the last 24 hours and the last 7 days, obviously you could expand this out into months and years, whatever you want. We have that data set, you build up whatever reports, but they decided this was really kind of a nice high level dashboard to see how the electric arc furnaces were running. And then another one, just kind of looking at the jetties. So as I'm onboarding and offboarding raw materials and finished goods, you can actually see berth 1 is unloading, berth 2 is available for a boat to come into, berth 3 is I'm actually loading. So again, how do I schedule the actual berths so when the ships come in, and then how can I actually look at my tonnage that's been loaded or offloaded to make sure I'm utilizing that jetty in my spaces here correctly. So again, here's just some high level KPIs built off of the data set, that our solution delivers. Last thing I want to do here, I know we've got a couple more minutes, is I want to kind of give a use case around Qatar Steel. So really what they wanted to do is they really wanted to put in a software stack that helped out with operational efficiency, right? They wanted to be able to have a data set they trusted. They wanted to be able to improve operations. And what they really wanted was to have their ERP system really have data it could trust. So I wanted a strong tie between my ERP system's going to say, here's what I think my inventory is, here's the products I need to make. And then when you actually go down into the MES system, you actually want to be able to say, I did just consume this inventory, and I actually just produced these finished goods. and actually go ahead and update that ERP so it has the correct inventory, it has the correct finished goods. We actually know that the specifications in the ERP are done, and then we actually have the orders, and we can tell people it's 40% complete, it's 60% complete. So basically making sure that the ERP system is up to date. So when management looks at it, they know it has good data and it's updated in real time automatically from the MES. So the ERP really tells the MES, this is what I want to do. And then the MES goes back and tells the ERP system, this is what I've done. And here's all the data around that production. That's kind of the focus there. And then really how they did this, they did use our MES, but they actually kind of, went in pretty slowly. So they actually started out here with a proof of concept. And they basically went through and they made sure, as we talked about, the most valuable thing at the beginning was to get that tight integration between the ERP system and the shop floor. And they wanted to make sure that those were tight. And then they actually went through and made sure that that worked. And they wanted real-time material tracking. And then they basically expanded out from one part of the plant into all of the plant. And they actually started adding quality checkpoints. So now I can either have my machine tell me the quality, such as the thickness and things like that, that are automatically coming through, or I can actually have people line side taking quality samples, or maybe even the lab adding quality samples, so we can build out that certificate of analysis. And then eventually they went all the way to looking at yield tracking, delay tracking, throughput, energy uses, right around sustainability metrics. And then they wanted traceability all the way down to the product and heat level traceability, right? So basically they did start small, and then they basically made sure that ERP was, that connection was stable and automated, and then basically going out to all the plant and then getting more effective KPIs. So again, really good success story here. They were actually using our MES software, also our historian. This is where all the data is coming off of your equipment and machines and getting used. And then also the dashboards that we just showed, those were all built in Operations Hub, which is a web-based dashboard that they were able to use. So they use that product portfolio, and by itself, along with our scheduling software, allows you to do all of that stuff I showed. So really one software package that really allows you to get a lot of outcomes and have one kind of data set that's your single source of truth. So that's kind of the time we had. I don't know, Aroni, are there some questions or anything from the people at the seminar? If I can't hear you for some reason, if you are speaking. You're still pretty faint. I don't know if anyone else is having that issue.
Is it better now?
Yes, that's much better.
Okay. So we do have a couple questions, but I also wanted to encourage our audience today to have enter any questions you have for Will through the Q&A tab on your navigation tool. So we have a couple minutes. So if you have any questions for Will, please put them on the chat. But while we're waiting for that, the one question we received is, does the scheduling module look at inventory levels when building the schedule?
So that's a good question. Yes. So the scheduling software has all of your assets listed. You can also tell it, for this product, I need this raw material and in this volume, and I also need my machine availability. So you can actually say, don't actually schedule this production until I know I have all of the raw materials inside the factory. The other thing you can do is you can actually put future dates in there. You can say, I'm going to get 7 tons of this delivered on Tuesday. So even though it's Monday and you don't know that that material is going to be there, or it's not in the warehouse right now, you can say it is going to get delivered on Tuesday. And that lets the scheduling software know, so that even though it's not there today, anytime after Tuesday, it's okay to schedule this production run. So yes, it does look at inventory.
Thank you, Will. And is this just for steel, or will it work for all metals like aluminum?
So this, I gave a steel example here. We have some customers we know who just get slabs in and they heat them up and then put them into a rolling mill. So really it works with any metals. We have people who are using brass, things like that. And it even goes into processing. So maybe you actually get raw steel on and then you end up forging it, or you end up CNCing it, or you end up fabricating it in some other way. This software solution, even though I give a kind of a casting example here, a melting and casting, it can be applied across any of those industries.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. So looks like we don't have any other questions. Reese Smith from Daimler just commented that it was a nice presentation, and she thanked you for that. Other than that, no more questions. And just like Will mentioned, we will be sharing this slide along with the recording of today's session on a thank you email. So appreciate you all attending.
Great. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.